Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How about yourself?
Very good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
How do I pronounce your name? Kens?
It could be Ken's or
Oh,
Mackenzie.
Mackenzie. Okay, we have a
Mhm.
Mackenzie too. I have
Nice.
never heard Kens. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Oops. So, how is that we are able to meet? That's so nice that we have a chance to chat. Did Mia reach out to you?
She did. And I've been very looking forward to this.
Wonderful. What has she told you so far?
Um, basically, she really hasn't told me all that much. She reached out over a video that I made regarding saddles and saddle fit, and just that we could talk about some topics. So, yeah.
Okay. And I saw you wrote a couple books. That's pretty good. Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
you're working on another book, I hear.
I am working on another one, and that one specifically surrounds like saddles and treeless versus treed and saddle fit and all that fun stuff. So,
Yes, yes, yes. There can't be enough. I mean, there's just a few of them out.
hmm
When I contact Dr. Joyce Harmon, she says, "Oh, not another book about saddle fitting." But
hmm
that was when I wrote my book almost 10 years
and
ago.
there's just
And
not a lot out there.
exactly, that's
hmm
what I was saying. You know, there can't be enough out there, and information always travels. Well, I would say bad news goes faster than good news, through
It
science or evidence based,
does.
right?
hmm
And I'm so glad to hear that you do that too, from your training with your Mustangs to everything. So, me too. I was very excited to meet you and talk to you today about this.
Well, thank you.
All right, what do you want to start today with?
So I've got three topics that I kind of brought up. The first one was treed versus treeless saddles. Kind of just like the differences, which one is better versus the other. I know it's a pretty controversial topic out there, so.
Why, it's one of my favorite topics, but why do you think it's so controversial from your side?
Well, so I'm very much into like the science-based training type stuff, and there's so many people out there who ride in things like the total contact saddle or just other like versions, essentially that look like bareback pads, but they call them saddles, and so many people hate on those, but at the same time people love them. But it's the same thing with treat saddles. Like the science-based equestrians will like, talk about how bad treat saddles are, and then the treat saddles people are like all over the treat saddles. So it's really just a mix of
Yeah,
people have their preferences, and I want to
yeah,
get down more to the science than just the opinions that people have on them.
yeah. So I always say, everybody has a belly button.
hmm
Everybody has an opinion.
hmm
And at the end of the day, we need to look at basic behavior or basic one-on-one common sense or follow the nature.
mm
And when we start with follow the nature or the law of nature, we need to establish, first of all, we're never supposed to sit on the animals.
Very true.
Nature, nature did not intend us to sit on these creatures, these wonderful horses. And when I think about reflex points or I talk about insertion or origin of certain muscle groups, or if I'm thinking of, well, simple things like my funny bone, where if I hit my funny bone, I feel it all the way to the fingertip.
Mm-hmm.
So, why do I say all this? Because when I hit certain areas on the horse's body, the horse will give me a reaction. Simple thing we all did as horse lover when we groom the horse and when we scratch them with our fingernails around the wither cup, right,
hmm
around the shoulders or withers, the lip quivers and they want to groom you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's certain things in they automatic do, not because I trained them, they just do. There's certain reflex point on the horse's spine, or and the loin, or
hmm
behind the scapular that we know affects the breathing, the conformation, or the actual movement, all the way to extra acid issues we do not like to see in guts or stomachs, what only leads to what? Ulcers and colics.
hmm
So when we know these items exist and because of scientific evidence and not because of opinion, then I, as a saddle fitter or as a rider, can say, I'm going to get an equipment what hits these points to make my horse quiver with the lip or have a super high rate, heart rate,
Yeah.
super high heart rate. Oh, there's a tongue twister. And so all I have to do is hit the lung meridian point, or I want to have them pace or
Mhm.
4-beat canter. So all I have to hit is the bucking reflex points. So these points are all with super science, nicely explained why they do it. Kind of like what I said with my funny bone, right? So we don't need to have a scientific paper to read up how a funny bone works because we all hit our funny bones. We know, yes, it's not funny at all. So
Yeah.
we can relate to that very fast. So now, if I think about the papers and the study I saw from Professor Christian Peham is out of this world. So I recommend you definitely look into it for your book. You will
All
love it.
right.
I mean, that guy has literally taken a horse's spine, like after dissected the horse, and then put it on the machine and see at what point does the spine actually breaks.
What's
Right?
the name again?
Christian Peham.
All right.
Right.
Sorry,
So
I'm taking notes.
no, it's okay. Um, what I do when I get cool live streams, what I do is because it's recorded, I
Mhm.
re-watch it and then I stop it and then so
Smart.
that's another option.
Smart.
So, but again, I don't mind to repeat things. So, what I have learned from people who really dedicated their life for these animals are most of the time not saddle makers. These people are either osteopath or they're biomechanics
Mhm.
specialists or they're chiropractor, massage therapists, or they are veterinarians or professors at several universities. I was really shocked to hear how little veterinarians know about back treatments, right?
Mhm.
And now, of course, we are so much more advanced. You know, we know, for example, when we measure the eye with the thermography camera, the eye is always the same temperature.
Mhm.
And if the temperature changes, the horse is in pain. So we even have by Dr. Sue Dice, and she published a paper of the horse's ethogram, so
Mhm.
facial expression of the horse. Now there's several universities who do this all over the world. So we are now able, scientific, to prove, the horse is inside. We don't have to say, oh, I'm opinionated against treeless saddle, bareback pads. Oh, I hate treed saddle. We know when a treed saddle hits one of those reflex points, I mean, there's 14 on each side of the horse, so 28 in total,
Mhm.
if we continue, if we count the pads and the girth in there. So the horse will be in pain or will create a reaction I, as a rider, might not like, right? If I enjoy that jerky movement of my right arm,
Mhm.
well, then I would keep pressing my funny bone. If I don't enjoy it, maybe I won't press the funny bone.
Mhm.
So treat saddles are absolutely horrible when they hit those negative reflex points.
Mhm.
Or I should rephrase that. Hit reflex point will create a negative reaction. So now I go and says, well, what did he just say? Treat saddles are horrible? If they hit, the big word is if they hit these reflex points, right? So for example, I have a good saddle here. And when I say good saddle, because this is a good saddle to show you back, right?
Mhm.
So here's a polo saddle. Okay, so there's different ways how companies recommend how saddles should fit. There's 8 different ways. And then the professor goes, but the horse's anatomy is the same no matter what breeding you have.
Mhm.
Why would you have different way of fitting saddles? Depends what you want. Right? So if I'm looking at, this is the first lumbar of a horse's spine, okay,
Mhm.
seeing how thin this is, and here's just a comparison, a screwdriver, right? Look how thick the screwdriver is compared to this bone,
Yeah.
all right? So that bone is really, really flimsy. And then here we got the nerves come through, here we sit the multifidus muscles, and then of course, between each nerve come the spinal nerves.
Mhm.
So if I would like to have no pressure on the spine, no pressure on the multifidus, or no pressure of the spine whatsoever, then I need to stay off the spinal nerves, right?
Mhm.
So here you have the viewpoint from the back, and you can see how high the spinal processes are.
Mhm.
And then what makes that width of the spine is not just the bone, it's that,
Mhm.
that multifidus muscle we're trying to stay away of. So here comes the really cool, interesting part. Every single saddle in the world, doesn't matter if you pay $80 from China or from India or from South America
Mhm.
or $15,000, that saddle has been made in Calgary, Canada, or Denver, Colorado, in the States. Every single Army saddle or Western saddle, everyone, no matter how much, has a fist wide bar. So when they attach the leather, okay, they the leather is just to close this up, and then they put the sheaths in.
Mhm.
So the contact is on these bars. So on English saddles, why do they make the panel so narrow? No horse's spine is that narrow.
Mhm.
So they call that type of fitting clothespin fit. And just like the word says, when you use the clothespin, you normally use this to pinch your undershirt onto a clothesline
Mhm.
so it dries and doesn't fly away. So here they're pinching that saddle onto the spine so it doesn't roll away when the rider sits and does his movement. So
Mhm.
for for the people who sell polo saddle, for them it fits because the saddle doesn't roll around. But for
Mhm.
the person who does any kind of um, acupuncture, massage, therapy, chiropractic, osteopath, veterinarians, they say, it
Mhm.
does not fit. It sits 100% on the ligament. So let's define fit. Because the polo saddle salesperson says, what do you want? You want a saddle for the rider to sit sideways on the horse to hit that ball on the ground? The saddle
Mhm.
works. It fits. See, the word fitting is such a overused words and misunderstood. So depends who you're asking. So it's fitting for that salesperson and the rider so the saddle doesn't roll. So if you ask the horse people, let me rephrase it. If you would ask the horse, which you can, with reading the facial expression, taking
Mhm.
the temperature of the eye, you know that horse is in pain. If you ask a veterinarian, biomechanics, any kind of a body worker, they will say that horse is in pain. So in their eyes, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So both are right. So we need to just say, hey, what does fit really mean? So
Mhm.
I always ask people, do you want that saddle to fit to work? For example, I have another good example.
Mhm.
Where are you calling from me from?
Arizona.
Arizona. Okay. So in the southeast, sort of Kentucky, Tennessee, that area, there's the sport mainly ridden there, not all existing in Europe or anywhere else in the world, where they make a saddle really, really, really long, and they put all the weight on these tiny, teeny lumbers. The
Mhm.
saddle is 26 inches long,
Wow.
and they sit the saddle onto the rider onto the lumber with a very narrow channel. That horse has a super hollow back. We call it a false elevation because now the head is high, and
Mhm.
then they have these high shoulder actions.
Mhm.
Right? We see it in the Tennessee walk, and all some listeners who do this sport, they will hate me now, but for them the purpose fits because that horse cannot canter. It
Mhm.
gets that long stride. It gets that false elevation. For them, it fits, right?
Mhm.
And everybody who knows a little bit about biomechanics and physiology and anatomy would say horrible fitting. Again, you have the science on one side, you have the salespeople in the middle, and then you have some people opinion who just make some words up without basis,
Yeah.
right? But oh, they are paid well, or they're very loud, or they are very influential people. And then little Johnny over here, or Susie, who just loves horses, there's three people who yell very loud.
Yeah.
What
Makes
is that
sense.
fitting? So let's go to back to the tree saddle, and then we go to the bareback pads or treeless saddles.
Alrighty.
the Treed saddles, as I said, if we want to have them work the way they have worked for thousands of years, you put the weight on the biggest and longest muscle, which is the longissimus dorsi. That is as fat as your thigh or my thigh, that thick, very deep, very wide. Okay, and it attaches to the bottom four vertebrae of the neck, runs underneath the scapula, lays on top of the ribs, and then it goes inserts into the hip. Origin is at the neck, inserts to the hip. So right on top of the rib cage, for thousands and thousands of years, they made saddles to stay off the spine, on top of the muscle, and then back here, we call this back flare. And like the word says, flare means it flares up. Flare doesn't need digging, doesn't need pressure, doesn't need weight-bearing surface. The back flare, like my hand would be the horse, flares up. The only reason this is made on army saddle or western saddle to put your backpacks, your tent, your couch, your kitchen, whatever you want to put on here, but eliminating the pressure on the lumbar. And the same with the front flare. Okay, the front part of the saddle here, again, it means flares up. So when the horse's movement, let me see if I have one here. Yeah, there you go. When the horse moves, okay, that scapula here needs to slide underneath. So that flares up. But the rest of it sits on the long muscle. So if a Treed saddle has a nice weight-bearing surface, it's even, and places the rider where you would naturally sit, no Western rider, no English rider, nobody who rides bareback will sit here because the horse will buck you off.
Yeah.
That's why I call it bucking reflex point. If I put a flank strap on and put massive pressure with that flank strap on these lumbers, they go nuts because this thing, what you see there, that gray thing, that's this kidney, which attaches with muscles to the lumbers versus processes. So now, if I have a Treed saddles, what places me where every rider sits, even beginner rider sits there. They sit at the base of the withers. Why is the base of the withers so important? Because you sit very close where the ribs are coming together and the horse's spine is solid. So if I ask my friend next door, come over here and press my elbows together while I have my fists together, good luck pressing my elbows together, right?
Yeah.
So if I have them apart, I can ask my wife, can you press my elbows together? She can do it very easy because my arms are not connected. So if I call these arms the ring of bones or the ring of ribs, this is what the horse likes. This is the ring of ribs, and it connects here where my fist comes together. And then this last rib goes all the way up to here. So the horse likes you here, and every bullfighter, every rodeo rider, where do you think they sit? In the middle of the back? Boing, boing. No, they sit where it's quiet. So that's why we sit. So here's some problem with English saddle or Treed saddle or Western saddle. When they place you in an area what is hard for the horse to carry you. Right? For example, just to give you an comparison to humans, because this is what we can do in our brain when we have to listen to people and you don't see picture. So let's pretend you and your friend have the same shoe size. You both size 7, except you have a narrow foot and your friend has a really wide foot. Okay? So size 7 is not always size 7 because you playing tennis in her shoes, you get blisters underneath your foot because you're sliding in the shoe. She plays tennis in your size 7 tennis shoes. She get blood blisters on her pinky because the toes are on top. So just because I have a horse, what has a certain measurement, let's say quarter horse fit, 3/4, semi-quarter fit, it doesn't necessarily mean it places the rider over that ring of bones, ring of ribs. Of course, if I ride a quarter horse or a cutter or team penning, there's 13 different divisions, and Western, right? So a good saddle stays off a good treed saddles stays off those negative reflex points, places the rider over the balance point, and here comes the only answer to the question. Treed saddles will have a chance to fit the horse and the rider without causing long-term damage if they stay off those reflex points. Treeless saddles, bareback pads, bareback riding will never have a chance to stay off the spinal nerves or balance the rider, so the rider does not sit his most or her most weight where these ribs are not together. Here's the fun fact. Every human has a narrower hip than the horse's width of the rib cage. In other words, this is always wider than the human's hips. So if you want to go to Kentucky and watch and go through the horse museum, you will come to a part where you see the American natives fighting the Spaniards. The first time they were fighting, all the American natives were riding bareback. Couple years down the road, you will see, how come all the American natives have saddles now and fighting the Spaniards? It's very easy. With the tree saddle, the horse is faster, the rider is balanced, and the horse is more agile to dodge the cannonballs or the bullets. So, needless to say, horse people who are so much more in touch with nature, American natives versus the Eastern people who come from Europe, okay? They're adapted to a saddle because they saw the massive advantage for the well-being of the animal to be faster. And never mind because the rider was sitting quiet. Because if you sit quiet in a tree saddle, your aim is higher. So if I'm sitting bareback and I'm trying to shoot, that's tough. But standing in your stirrup and hovering, now my aim is higher. So if you are riding a horse, bounce, 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 it's ridiculous. Right? So how can that be soft to a horse? So I always say to companies who call themselves treeless saddle, I says, you are the marketing geniuses. Because all what it really is a bareback pad with a little built-up foam or wood in the front and in the back. And the second you put an attachment for your stirrup leather on, what do you think will do? Where do you think this will go?
It'll only put pressure on the one area of the spine.
Massive, right? But the most people do not understand. No human can eliminate the pressure of your seat bone by squeezing your thighs together to lift yourself off the horse's back. You can't. You're either squishing like crazy the intercostal muscle, or you're squishing your seat bones all in the spine. And now we talk about 75% of all riders in Western are women, and 95% of all riders in English are women. So if I look at the women's pelvis, the first you hit is your pubic symphysis. You're hitting your crotch bone. Your seat bone's sitting so much further away than your crotch bone if this is level. Okay? So then you hit your female parts. See, when guys like I ride, we all have our tighty-whities. And we push our parts left or right. So we don't fall on it. Right? So women cannot do that. They can't push their female parts to the side because they're inside. We don't have this bone here, what rubs like where the underwear line runs up. Watch when I hold this in comparison. Look how our seat bones are much lower and how this goes up. Now I didn't make these up. Nature made these. This is the beautiful sex of females have a birth channel, and these guys don't. So what has that to do with anything? Well, it's how the bone structure is sitting on the animal. What needs a tree to balance your spine without crippling. So now when I spoke to gynecologist or Dr. James Warson, who is a neurosurgeon who wrote the book Pain-Free Riders, right? So it's a, let me see, I have it right here. Dr. James Warson. Oh, it's Instagram, so it's backwards. But written by Dr. James Warson, you definitely want to read this.
All right.
So you can see the treeless saddle is not only horrible to horses because you always will sit on the spinal nerves and multifidus and you don't distribute the pressure, but it also does not allow the rider to balance to her natural back. So you as a rider have the choice. You know, if you weigh 150 pounds, now you can ride like a 300 pounds rider, boom, boom, or you can ride like half of your weight. So that's why the American natives find, why is my horse so much faster all the time?
Yeah.
Because they ride so much lighter. Every single treeless saddle, every single bareback pad, every single whatever you want to call these saddles, you will see them. They cannot. It's physical impossible. Sit soft. What does sitting soft mean? Sitting in your standing seat. What is the standing seat? When I stand, I have my weight on my feet, but my spine has 4 curves. And when I run, I jump, I feather with my ankles, my knee, my hip. The standing seat is exactly the same, except I'm sitting on my seat bones. My weight is distributed. But I still, in my standing seat, have the ability with my 4 curves to make my weight in half and absorb the income and the pressure in my ankles, hips, and heels. And one more time, no human is wider in the hip here than a horse. So a good thing, if you have an oil barrel in the basement or in the yard, sit on an oil barrel and try to put your toes forward and sit with your heels under your hip and sit upright. No way. Okay? You will do a split. In other words, if you are very flexible, your lower leg, like my finger there, sticks out because your knee bends like your elbow. Okay? So if your leg just splays out, how you get your lower leg on it?
Yeah.
So naturally you turn your knee, your toes out. Now how you post trot? You put the weight on your stirrup, and now you put a massive number on your meniscus. Okay, so your knee joint is screaming, or your hip joint. Not my words, a medical doctors, and that's why I was so excited to talk to you because you don't go by opinion. You did all this research when you train horses, what you put in with the Mustangs, and understand how our pathway goes in our nerve receptors and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So I find saddle fitting super fascinating because as I start in the beginning of our talk, what is saddle fit?
Different for everybody.
Different for do I want to sell saddles for this discipline? Do I want just to flap my mouth and say, oh, my opinion is this, or do I want to speak for the horse? And if I want to speak to the horse, we need to go back like our ancestor did it. Okay, and you have a horse for a long time without constant pain. So my opinion, save the money, get yourself a bareback pad or ride bareback and play around. Don't spend money on something what is way overpriced, what has an illusion which you waste a lot of money. If you I mean, we all ridden bareback. I grew up with horses, and we all played around with us. But there is a reason why the American native switched to a saddles. So
That makes sense.
You don't comment that. I'm so sorry I didn't get to the other parts, and
oh no, you're good.
I had like so many questions for you, and the time's already up. I cannot believe it. But maybe Mia can connect us again, and we can touch if this was any value to you. Or...
It was definitely valuable, and I mean, if we can connect again in the future, I definitely appreciate that.
Super. Hey Ken, it's nice to meet you. Talk to you soon.
Alrighty, I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.